"Mom, it's just for emergencies. You trust me, don't you?" That's what my son said as he held my worn blue bank card between his fingers, the same card I had used for nearly 20 years. The numbers were fading, the plastic slightly cracked at the edge, but it had always meant security to me, my savings, my careful planning, my independence. In his hand, in that moment, it looked strangely small and fragile, like something that might snap if he pressed too hard. I remember thinking, it's only a card. The real thing I'm handing him is my trust. I didn't know then that the same card would later be paused on a police officer's computer screen as we watched my son at an ATM withdrawing my life one bill at a time. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Central Florida, the kind where the air feels heavy with jasmine in the evenings and the sprinklers start up like clockwork at dawn. My house is modest, one-story pale yellow with a porch swing my late husband installed before his heart finally gave out 14 years ago. We built our lives slowly, brick by brick and paycheck by paycheck. I was a nurse's aide, he worked maintenance at the county school, and together we managed to save just enough to feel safe. Savings to me always meant dignity, the ability to buy my own groceries, pay my own bills, and not be a burden on anyone, especially my only child. My son Daniel grew up in that house, mosquito bites on his legs, scraped knees from the cracked sidewalk, the smell of my arroz con pollo drifting through the open windows. When he was small, he would hug my waist and promise he'd buy me a big house on the beach one day, once he became rich and famous. I used to laugh and tell him I didn't need a big house, just his love and a bit of respect when I got old. Somewhere between those sandy-kneed promises and his 30s, something in him hardened. The world didn't give him the success he thought he deserved, and he seemed to believe someone else had to pay for that disappointment. There had been red flags, though I didn't call them that back then. When he was a teenager, money disappeared from my purse now and then, just a few dollars. He always had an excuse, a book he needed, a school project, a friend who needed lunch. Once, when he was 23 and back home after dropping out of community college, I noticed a small cash advance on my credit card statement. He laughed it off, said it must be a bank error, and I believed him, because it was easier to believe the bank was wrong than that my son had taken what wasn't his. I told myself, he's stressed. He'll grow out of this. I raised him better. Life went on. I retired from the nursing home at 68, my hands stiff and my back aching, but proud that I had earned my little nest egg. I kept everything organized in a floral notebook I bought at the dollar store. Balances, bill due dates, notes in my neat looping handwriting. That notebook and my faded blue bank card were like two halves of my security. They always stayed together in the same old leather wallet my husband had given me for our 25th anniversary. The leather was soft and worn now, but it still smelled faintly of him when I opened it. When Daniel asked to keep the card for emergencies, he was, without knowing it, asking to hold that entire history in his hand. He came over one humid afternoon in July, sweat already beading at his hairline, even before he sat down. He poured himself a glass of my orange juice without asking and sighed heavily. "Things are really rough right now, Mom," he said. "The car's acting up, work's slow, and if something happens to you, I need to be able to get to your money fast. For emergencies." His eyes were tired and bloodshot, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to curl up on the couch with a fever and cling to me. "Don't be paranoid," I scolded myself. "He's your son." I opened my wallet, slid out the blue card, and placed it in his palm. "I'll only use it if something happens to you, or if you're in the hospital and can't get to it," he promised. "You'll barely notice I have it." Those words, "you'll barely notice," would haunt me later. At the time, they felt almost comforting. I nodded, my fingers brushing the worn plastic one last time. "Okay, but only for emergencies, Daniel," I said. "I trust you." He smiled, kissed my cheek, and slipped the card into his pocket. I watched him walk out to his car, the late afternoon sun glinting off the windshield, and a strange chill ran through me despite the heat. Some small, quiet part of me whispered, "You just made a mistake." Months later, I would sit in a small fluorescent-lit office at the police station, that same blue card lying between us on the table, its edges almost mocking me. A young officer with kind eyes would pause the grainy black and white footage from an ATM camera. "Is this your son, ma'am?" he would ask. On the screen, Daniel would be staring up at the camera, his hand on the keypad, my card in his fingers. My throat would tighten as I whispered, "Yes, that's him." And everything I had ignored for years, the small thefts, the excuses, the lies would rush back in like a tide I could no longer hold back. But that night, when he first took the card, there was no police officer, no footage, no ATM. There was just a mother who wanted to believe her son cared about her safety, not her savings. I remember closing my wallet, feeling the lighter space where the card used to be, and patting my floral notebook as if to reassure myself. "You raised him, he loves you. He'll do what's right," I told myself. I didn't know then that my careful notes and that little notebook would someday be the very evidence that undid his lies. If I'm honest, the first real red flag came just 2 weeks after he took the card, and I brushed it aside. That's what this story is really about, I suppose. The little ways we betray ourselves long before anyone betrays us. We see what we don't want to see, and we call it loyalty. We swallow our doubts, and we call it love. I thought I was protecting him. I didn't realize I was protecting his secrets. The first emergency came as a tiny, almost invisible tremor in my routine. I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, the ceiling fan swirling the warm Florida air, when I noticed a grocery charge on my monthly statement from a store I didn't recognize. I had logged into my online banking, a habit I kept from my working days, and scrolled through the transactions with my usual careful eye. Among the usual small charges, I saw it, a large purchase from an upscale organic market across town. $122.37. I called Daniel that afternoon. He answered on the third ring, distracted. "Yeah, Mom," he said, like he was already annoyed. I explained what I had seen, my voice light, trying not to accuse. "Oh, that," he said quickly. "I grabbed you some special things, healthier stuff, organic and all that. I was going to bring them over, but it slipped my mind." There was a pause, and I heard muffled music in the background, laughter that didn't sound like mine. Organic groceries. For me, I thought, glancing at the plain rice and beans on my counter. But I let it go, telling myself he was trying, that maybe he was just bad at follow-through. The second incident arrived like a mosquito bite, small, irritating, easy to ignore until it itched so much I couldn't. Another late-night withdrawal, this time from an ATM near a bar he frequented. "Withdraw $60, 11:48 p.m. That was not the hour for emergencies, unless you counted last call." I asked him again, more firmly this time. "You sure you're only using the card when you have to?" I asked. I saw a late-night withdrawal. He chuckled, a sound that didn't reach his eyes even through the phone. "Mom, I was paying for a tow. The car broke down," he said. "You want me stranded?" His tone made me feel foolish for even asking. The third betrayal hurt more, not because of the amount, but because of how he twisted my age into an excuse. I got a notice from the bank about an overdraft fee. I sat at my table, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. I had always prided myself on never overdrawing my account. If we didn't have the money, we simply went without. I called Daniel, my voice shaking. "Something's wrong with the account," I said. "It says I went below zero." There was a long silence, then a sigh. "Mom, you've been forgetful lately," he said. "You probably swiped it and didn't remember. It happens, you're not getting any younger." His words cut deeper than the overdraft fee ever could. Forgetful? I thought. I still balanced my checkbook to the penny. I still remembered the names of every resident I'd cared for at the nursing home 30 years ago. "I remember what I spend," I said quietly. "Well, the bank doesn't make mistakes," he replied. "Maybe you should let me handle things more so you don't get confused." I hung up, staring at the letter, feeling something fragile inside me crack. Is this what getting old means? People use your age to erase your truth? The final straw, the breaking point, came on a sticky August morning when my electricity bill arrived with a bright red past due stamped across the top. I knew I had set aside the money. I could see the note in my floral notebook from the previous month. I opened my online banking again, hands clammy, and this time I went back several months. The numbers blurred before my eyes: withdrawals, charges, more late-night ATMs, online purchases from stores I'd never heard of. Withdraw. $200, $400, month after month, like termites eating through the foundation of my small security. My vision narrowed, and for a moment, I thought I might faint. How much did he take? How long has this been happening? My heart raced as I did the math slowly, double-checking myself because maybe, just maybe, I had made some mistake. But the more I added, the clearer it became. Thousands of dollars, drained from my account in small, careful bites. I looked at my floral notebook, the neat lines of ink, the crossed-off bills, and realized something awful. I had been budgeting around a reality that no longer existed. My savings weren't shrinking because of inflation or groceries. They were shrinking because my son had turned my emergencies-only card into his private ATM. I didn't call him right away. Instead, I sat in my quiet kitchen, the fan humming above, and listened to the sound of my own breathing. You can't let him talk you out of what you see, I told myself. You have the statements, the dates, the times. I pulled out a manila folder from the drawer and began printing the statements, one by one, the printer's whirring filling the silence. Each page that fell into the tray was like a piece of a puzzle, and with each one, the picture of who my son had become came into sharper focus. Later that week, I went to the bank in person. The Florida sun was blinding as I crossed the parking lot, the asphalt radiating heat through my sensible shoes. Inside, the air was too cold, the fluorescent lights too bright. A young woman named Ava greeted me at the desk, her smile warm. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" she asked. My fingers tightened around my leather wallet. "I think there's something wrong with my account," I said. "Or maybe there's something wrong with my trust." Her smile faded, replaced by concern. She invited me into her small cubicle and pulled up my account on her screen. As she scrolled through the transactions, her eyes widened. "Have you been making these ATM withdrawals?" she asked gently. I shook my head, my voice barely more than a whisper. "No. That's why I'm here." She glanced at me, then back at the screen. "Some of these are really late at night," she said, "and at locations far from your home. We might be dealing with fraud." The word hung in the air like a storm cloud. Fraud. My son. My own son. My stomach turned. Ava paused, then lowered her voice. "If you want, we can flag the account and we can involve law enforcement," she said carefully. I left the bank that day with my card replaced, my account temporarily frozen, and a stack of printed statements Ava had slipped into a folder for me. She had written her name and the bank's number on a sticky note attached to the front. As I walked out into the parking lot, the weight of the folder in my hands felt heavier than it should have. This isn't just paper, I thought. This is proof. Proof of what he's done. Proof that I'm not crazy or forgetful. I slid the folder into my old leather wallet's side pocket, the one I hadn't used since my husband died, and I understood in that moment that something fundamental had changed. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the floral notebook open, the manila folder beside it, and my new bank card carefully tucked under my palm. The cicadas sang loudly outside, their chorus almost angry, like they were protesting on my behalf. I traced the raised numbers on the new card and glanced at the space where the old one had been. He still has the old card, I realized, and he doesn't know I've seen everything yet. My trust in him was gone, but something new had taken its place, a quiet, relentless determination. I decided I would not scream, I would not beg, I would not let him twist my memory or my age against me. I would get answers, and this time I would not face it alone. As I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed, I made myself a promise. If my son wanted to keep using that card like his little secret, he could. I would let him dig his own hole a little deeper. But when the time came, I would not be the one standing at the bottom of it, wondering how I got there. I would be standing at the top, holding the evidence in one hand and my dignity in the other. He thought the card gave him power, I thought. As I closed my eyes, he has no idea what happens when the police check the ATM. The next week, I changed a ritual that had defined my Sundays for years. Normally, Daniel would come by for dinner. Rice, beans, maybe chicken if it was on sale, and he would sit at my table, scrolling on his phone while I cooked. I used to let him sort through my mail as we ate, answering his casual questions about my bills, my insurance, my pension. It had started as a convenience when my eyesight got a little weaker, but somewhere along the way it became a habit I didn't question. That Sunday, I stacked my mail neatly in a drawer before he arrived and locked it. When he walked in, he went straight to the usual spot on the table, his hand reaching for the pile that wasn't there. "Where's your mail?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, I handled it already," I said, stirring the pot. Decided it's good exercise for my brain to keep up with it myself. He laughed, but it sounded too high, too forced. "You sure?" he asked. "Those companies can be tricky. You might miss something." I looked up, meeting his eyes for a long moment. "I'll manage," I said. For the first time in years, I watched him look uncomfortable in my kitchen instead of me. After dinner, when he left without mentioning any emergency, I sat outside on the porch swing, the humid night air wrapping around me. My neighbor Maria wandered over, wiping her hands on her apron. "You look tired, Criada," she said, lowering herself onto the swing beside me. Maria had lived next door for 20 years. She'd seen Daniel grow up, seen my husband's ambulance pull away that horrible night, seen me learn to say I'm fine even when I wasn't. I hesitated for a moment, then opened my mouth, and the truth came pouring out about the withdrawals, the bank, the overdraft, the way Daniel had blamed my memory. Maria listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing with each detail. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. No, she said. "You are not crazy, and you are not forgetful. I've seen you count change in your hand without even looking down." She took my hand and squeezed it. "You need to protect yourself, and if he's doing something wrong, he needs to face it." Her words steadied me like a hand on my back. I am not alone, I thought. Someone else sees it. That night, I wrote "Tell Maria Everything" in my floral notebook and underlined it. That notebook had started as a ledger. It was becoming a record of my awakening. 2 days later, I went back to the bank to see Ava. I brought my floral notebook and the manila folder with me, the symbolic heart and brain of this whole mess. "I want to understand exactly what's happened," I told her. "Every withdrawal, every charge that I didn't make." She printed more detailed statements and highlighted the suspect transactions with a yellow marker, the pages slowly filling with neon streaks that looked like warning signs. "We can request ATM camera footage for some of these," she said. "It takes a little time, but if there's fraud, we'll see who's making the withdrawals." She paused, then leaned forward. "Mrs. Rivera, have you considered filing a police report?" she asked gently. The words made my chest tight. Turning in a stranger is one thing. Turning in your own child is another. "I don't want to send my son to jail," I whispered. I want him to stop. And I want people to believe me. I want to know I'm not imagining this." Ava nodded slowly. "Filing a report doesn't automatically mean he'll end up in jail," she said, "but it does mean someone will officially look into it. And if it's really him, it might be the only thing that makes him stop." I went home with a new card, more statements, and a small white business card with the number of the local police department printed on it. I placed it carefully inside my floral notebook, like a bookmark between the life I had and the life I was about to step into. That evening, I took out a ruler and began lining up the statements by date, writing notes in the margins. 1:14, $200 ATM, 10:12 p.m., Daniel at the dock bar. 2:02, $300 ATM, to 11:56 p.m., same location. 3:20, $400 online purchase. Gaming website? The evidence spread across my kitchen table like a map of every time I had trusted him and been wrong. Finally, I picked up the phone and dialed the number on the card. A calm voice answered, "County Sheriff's Office. How may I direct your call?" My throat tightened. "I need to report financial misuse," I said, stumbling over the word fraud. "I think my son has been using my bank card without my permission." They transferred me to a detective named Daniels. His voice was steady, professional. He asked me to explain everything, from when I gave Daniel the card to the overdraft notice. I read off dates and amounts from my floral notebook, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. "We can open a case and request the ATM footage through the bank," Detective Daniels said. "I'll also need copies of your statements and any notes you've kept." I glanced at my notebook and the folder. "I have all of that," I said. "I've kept track of everything." He seemed impressed. "Good," he said. "That will help us a lot. I know this is difficult when it involves family, but you're doing the right thing." When I hung up, I felt shaken, but also strangely lighter, like I'd been carrying a full laundry basket up the stairs alone, and someone had finally taken one handle. Over the next week, I became my own quiet investigator. I kept my routine mostly the same so Daniel wouldn't suspect anything. But inwardly, everything was different. I no longer discussed my bills with him. I no longer left my purse on the counter when he visited. I locked my bedroom door when I showered, the keys hanging on a small hook I'd installed inside my closet. That key, dangling next to my late husband's old car keys, became another symbol of boundaries, of locked doors that didn't used to need locks. I noted each call from Detective Daniels with a timestamp in my floral notebook. Daryl 021. Daniels called. ATM footage requested. To 424. Daniels confirmed multiple late-night withdrawals by same mail. He never said Daniels' name in those early calls, just the subject. But I knew. At night, I would lie awake, the ceiling fan whirring overhead, and replay every conversation I'd had with my son since giving him the card. Where did he decide this was okay? Did he tell himself I wouldn't notice? That I didn't deserve to know? The questions had no answers yet, but the evidence was growing. Eventually, Daniels called with a tone in his voice that made my heart race. "We've received some of the ATM footage," he said. "I'd like you to come in and take a look. We'll also have someone from the bank present." I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said quietly, "I'll come." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and put my hand on the leather wallet, on the side pocket where the folder now lived. My old blue card was still with Daniel somewhere out there, but the real power had shifted. It was in my hands now, in my notes, my statements, my memory. I knew I couldn't confront him yet, not without seeing everything they had. So I made a plan with Daniels and Ava. The bank would call Daniel and ask him to come in for a routine account review, the kind they did sometimes when adding a cosigner or adjusting access. He wouldn't suspect anything. He had spent months counting on my confusion, my silence. When he arrived, they would bring him into a small office where I would already be sitting, folder in my lap, Detective Daniels at my side, the bank manager across the table. Just picturing it made my knees weak and my spine straighten. The night before the meeting, I pulled out the old blue card statement and the new card they had issued me. I placed them side by side on the table, like before and after photos of a person who'd finally decided they deserved better. Then I tucked the new card into my wallet, placed the floral notebook and the manila folder in my bag, and laid out my clothes for the next day. My best blouse, pressed slacks, the necklace my husband had given me on our last anniversary. He won't be there to hold my hand, I thought, but he'll be with me when I tell the truth. As I turned off the light, I paused at the door and looked back at the table. The wallet, the notebook, the folder, they were just objects, simple and ordinary. But together they had become my armor. My son thought he was the only one who knew how to use that little rectangle of plastic. Tomorrow, he would learn what happens when a mother who's been underestimated for too long walks into a room with evidence and refuses to be talked over. "I'm scared," I admitted to myself as I climbed into bed. "But I'm ready." The morning of the meeting, the Florida sky was a flat, unbroken blue, the kind that makes the heat feel endless. I arrived at the bank 15 minutes early, my heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Inside, the cool air brushed against my cheeks, and Ava greeted me with a small, encouraging smile. "They're getting the room ready," she said. "Detective Daniels is already here." She led me down a short hallway to a glass-walled office. Daniel sat at the small table inside, a laptop open in front of him, a few printed photos and documents neatly arranged beside it. "Mrs. Rivera," he said, standing as I walked in. "Thank you for coming." I sat down slowly, placing my floral notebook and manila folder on the table. The bank manager, a middle-aged man with graying hair named Mr. Collins, joined us, closing the door behind him. "We appreciate you working with us," he said, his tone formal but kind. Ava slipped into a chair near the corner, a silent witness. 4 against 1, I thought briefly, then corrected myself. No, 4 for the truth. Daniels turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a paused black and white image of an ATM. The timestamp glowed in the corner, 02/14/37. "We'll go through a few clips," he said. "If at any point you need a break, just say so." I nodded, my fingers curling around the edge of the table. He pressed a key, and the footage began to play. A figure stepped up to the machine, head bowed slightly. Even in the grainy footage, I recognized the shape of his shoulders, the tilt of his head. My breath caught. "Pause," I whispered, before he even reached for the card slot. Daniels froze the image and zoomed in as much as the resolution allowed. The face became clearer, the familiar line of a jaw I had kissed 1,000 times when he was a boy. "Is this your son?" Daniels asked softly. I stared at the screen, the dryness in my throat making it hard to swallow. "Yes," I said finally, "that's Daniel." My voice didn't shake, to my surprise. It felt strange, hearing myself say it so clearly. There it is, I thought, the moment you can never take back. We watched several more clips, each one a blow I had to absorb without flinching. January, February, March, withdrawals at different ATMs, at different times, always the same face, the same casual way he slid my card into the machine. Sometimes he glanced over his shoulder, sometimes he didn't. Once he laughed at something on his phone as the machine dispensed cash. "That withdrawal triggered your overdraft," Daniel said, pausing the footage. He withdrew more than what was safely available. The image on the screen showed him stuffing the bills into his wallet, my blue card glinting briefly in the camera's eye. Each clip was accompanied by a printed still photo and a corresponding statement printout. "Withdraw $300, the dock, ATM, 11:56 p.m. Withdraw $400, the dock, ATM, 11:56 p.m. Withdraw $400, Convenience Mart, 1:18 a.m. There was no emergency in any of those screenshots, just a man treating someone else's stability like a slot machine. I ran my fingers lightly over one of the glossy printouts, tracing the outline of his face. "I changed your diapers," I thought. "I held your hand when you were afraid of thunderstorm. When did you stop seeing me as someone to protect and start seeing me as a number on a screen?" After we finished, there was a heavy silence in the room. "Mrs. Rivera," Mr. Collins said carefully, "based on what we've seen, we are classifying these transactions as unauthorized use of your card." Daniels nodded. "And I have enough here to confront him," he added. "If you're still willing, we'll proceed with the plan. The bank will call him, ask him to come in. We'll all be present when he arrives." I exhaled slowly, feeling both drained and sharpened. "Yes," I said. "I'm willing." Ava went to make the call while we remained in the office. I sat back, my hands folded over my floral notebook. "There's still time to back out," a small voice whispered. "You could tear up the statements, erase the footage, pretend this never happened," but another voice, stronger now, answered it. "And then what? Keep letting him siphon your future away? Keep letting him tell you that you're forgetful while he empties your account?" I straightened my shoulders. No, the time for pretending had passed. About 20 minutes later, Ava peeked back in. "He's on his way," she said quietly. He sounded annoyed, but he agreed to come. My stomach flipped, but I nodded. Daniels adjusted the laptop, setting one still photo beside it, the clearest shot of Daniel's face at the ATM. Mr. Collins arranged the printed statements in a neat stack, the yellow highlighted lines forming a bright, undeniable trail. I reached into my bag and placed my leather wallet on the table, opening it just enough to show the empty slot where the old blue card had once lived. It felt like laying out my own exhibit. We heard the glass doors of the bank swish open out in the lobby, a murmur of voices, footsteps on the tiled floor, the beep of the sign-in keypad. My heart pounded louder with each sound. Ava appeared again. "He's here," she whispered. "I'll bring him back." She closed the door behind her, and for a few seconds the room felt suffocating. I focused on my breathing, on the coolness of the tabletop under my palms, on the faint hum of the air conditioner. "You are not a child in trouble," I reminded myself. "You are a woman asking for the truth." The door opened, and Daniel stepped in, confusion and irritation furrowing his brow. "What's going on?" he demanded, then faltered when he saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" His eyes flicked from me to Daniel's badge, to the bank manager, to the laptop. "We just wanted to review some account activity with both of you present," Mr. Collins said calmly. "Please have a seat." Daniel stayed standing for a moment, his jaw tight, then dropped into the chair opposite me. "Is there a problem with her account?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. Daniels folded his hands. We're here because there have been several ATM withdrawals and charges that Mrs. Rivera reports she did not authorize, he said. He turned the laptop slightly toward Daniel and clicked. The now familiar footage appeared on the screen. We obtained video recordings from multiple ATMs, Daniels continued. We'd like to clarify who made these withdrawals. The clip played, showing Daniel approaching the machine, sliding the card in, typing his code. He stiffened. That could be anyone, he said quickly. The footage is grainy. Daniel zoomed in, freezing the frame on Daniel's face. Even in black and white, his features were unmistakable. Is this you, Mr. Rivera? He asked. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He shrugged, leaning back. Maybe, he said. If it is, it's because my mom asked me to help her. She gets confused with the machines. His eyes darted toward me, silently urging me to back him up. I met his gaze steadily. No, I said softly but clearly. I did not ask you to take out those amounts. Not at those times, not at those places. Something flashed in his eyes. Panic, anger, maybe both. Mom, come on, he said, forcing a laugh. You gave me the card, you said I could use it. You probably just forgot. His voice took on that coaxing tone he used as a teenager when he wanted me to sign a permission slip without reading it. We all know you've been a little scattered lately. He looked at Daniels. She's 73. She doesn't remember everything she spends. The air in the room seemed to tighten around us. That's not accurate, Mr. Collins said, his voice firm. Mrs. Rivera has been consistent and clear with her records. We've reviewed them. I reached for my floral notebook and opened it, turning it so Daniel could see. Every bill, every amount, every date was written in my neat handwriting. Some of the withdrawals were circled in red. I remember, I said quietly. I remember what I spend and what I don't. I tapped the circled amounts. I did not spend. Daniel slid the stack of printed statements toward Daniel, the yellow highlights glowing under the fluorescent lights. We also know the locations of these ATMs, he said. Several of them are near places you frequent. The Dock Bar, the Gaming Lounge, the Convenience Mart on Pine Street. And in all the footage we obtained, it appears to be you using the card. He let the words sink in. You want to explain that? Daniel's face reddened. So what if I used it a few times? He snapped. She told me I could use it for emergencies. What emergency required a $400 withdrawal at 1:18 a.m. from a bar ATM? I asked. My voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it I hadn't heard in myself before. He turned toward me, astonished. Bills, he said. My car, rent, food. Life is expensive, Mom. You wouldn't understand. You have your pension. I shook my head slowly. Your life being expensive is not my emergency, I said. You didn't ask. You didn't tell me. And you let my account overdraft while you were at a bar. There was a murmur outside the office door. A teller passing by slowed, glancing in through the glass. Daniels noticed and quietly pulled the blinds halfway closed, giving us some privacy while still leaving thin slats of light. Mr. Rivera, he said, at this point what we have meets the criteria for fraud. Repeated unauthorized use of a bank card belonging to someone else, resulting in financial harm. The word hung there, heavy and undeniable. Fraud. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mix-up. Not old age. Daniel's shoulders slumped for a moment. Then he straightened abruptly. You can't do this, he said, looking at me. I'm your son. His eyes were wet now, anger mingled with something that might have been fear. After everything I've done for you. The words twisted in my gut. Everything you've done for me, I thought, remembering the overdue electric bill, the overdraft fee, the countless times I had babysat for his convenience. I took a breath. I am not doing this to you, I said softly. You did this. I am just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. A knock sounded at the door, and Ava cracked it open. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but Mrs. Rivera's power company just faxed over a notice we requested, showing the past due amount and the dates. She handed the papers to Mr. Collins, who skimmed them and passed them to me. The disconnect notice lined up perfectly with one of the large withdrawals Daniel had made. The implication was clear. He had taken what I needed for my lights and air conditioning and left me in the dark, literally and figuratively. Daniels leaned forward, his tone serious but not unkind. Here's where we are, Mr. Rivera, he said. Your mother has filed a report. The bank has confirmed unauthorized transactions. We have video evidence of you using the card without her present. She's been clear she did not grant permission for this use. He looked Daniel in the eye. You can continue to deny it, and we can proceed formally with charges. Or you can acknowledge what you did, work with the bank on restitution, and we can discuss how that affects the case. For a long moment, the only sound was the dull hum of the air conditioning. Then something in Daniel seemed to deflate. He stared at the table, his voice low. Fine, he muttered. Yes, I used the card. Yes, I took the money. I thought... He hesitated, then looked up at me. I thought you had plenty. I thought you wouldn't notice. The honesty, twisted as it was, hurt more than the lie. You thought I wouldn't notice, or you hoped I wouldn't matter enough to... Mr. Collins cleared his throat. We'll be closing your access to your mother's accounts immediately, he said, and we'll work out a plan for restitution, which may include reversing some of these charges or setting up a repayment schedule. Daniels nodded. I'll note your admission in my report, he said to Daniel. Ultimately, the state attorney's office will decide how to proceed, but your cooperation today will be part of that decision. Daniel shot him a resentful look, then turned back to me. So that's it, he asked, his voice breaking. You're really going to let them treat me like a criminal? My eyes stung, but I did not look away. You treated me like a stranger with a card, I said quietly. You treated my life savings like free money. If you didn't want to be seen as a criminal, you shouldn't have acted like one. A tear slipped down his cheek. He wiped it away angrily, grabbed his keys and stood up. For a second I thought he might storm out, but he paused at the door, his hand on the handle. You've ruined my life, he said. No, I replied. I've stopped you from ruining mine. He left, the door closing a little too hard behind him. The room seemed to exhale with his absence. Daniels turned to me. You did well, he said. That's not easy. My hands were trembling now that it was over, but my voice remained steady. What happens next? I asked. He explained that there would be follow-up paperwork, that the bank would work on recovering some of the funds, that the state might pursue charges, or might focus on restitution and financial protection orders. It all sounded distant, like a TV playing in another room. Outside, in the bank lobby, a few staff members glanced up as I walked past with Daniels and Mr. Collins. I could feel their eyes on me, but for once, I didn't shrink under the attention. Ava caught my gaze and gave me a small nod of respect. The Florida sun hit my face as I stepped outside, bright and unforgiving. I shaded my eyes with one hand and held my leather wallet close with the other. I walked into that building as a woman who doubted herself, I thought, and I'm walking out as a woman who believed her own eyes. The weeks after the confrontation felt strangely quiet, like the air after a storm. My phone rang less often. Daniel stopped dropping by unannounced. At first, the silence felt like a punishment. I would catch myself listening for his car, for his footsteps on the porch, for the sound of his voice calling Ma through the screen door. They never came. Instead, there were calls from the bank, from Daniels, from a victim advocate who explained my rights and options. I learned phrases I never thought I'd need. Financial exploitation, vulnerable adult, protective measures. The state eventually decided not to pursue full criminal charges, in part because of my age and my clear wish to avoid seeing my son behind bars, and in part because Daniel agreed to a formal restitution agreement. He had to sign legal documents acknowledging what he'd done, promising to repay a portion of what he took, and agreeing to have no access to my accounts ever again. The bank reversed some fees. Daniels helped me file paperwork to flag my name in case any future suspicious financial activity appeared. On paper, justice was measured in signatures and reversed charges. In my heart, it was measured in something else, boundaries. Not everyone understood. A cousin called to say she'd heard some story about me and Daniel at the bank and wanted to know the real tea. I told her the truth, calmly and plainly. She clicked her tongue. Family is messy, she said. You sure you didn't overreact? Kids borrow money all the time. I thanked her for her opinion and changed the subject. At church, whispers fluttered around me for a few Sundays, but the people who mattered, the ones who had known me for decades, came to my side. You did the right thing, my pastor said quietly. Protecting yourself is not a sin. One evening, Maria came over with a pot of caldo and a bag of fresh limes. We sat at my table, the floral notebook between us, now repurposed. There were still numbers and dates, but there were also new pages filled with things like questions to ask the bank, resources for seniors, and things I enjoy doing alone. "You're different," she said, sipping her soup. "Taller somehow." I laughed softly. "I'm the same height," I said. She shook her head. "You know what I mean. You're not apologizing for taking up space anymore." Eventually, Daniel did call. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the sky overcast, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I saw his name on the screen and felt my lungs seize for a second. Then I answered, "Hello." There was a long silence on the other end, then a quiet, "Hi, Mom." He didn't sound angry, he sounded tired. We talked around the situation at first, the weather, his job, how he'd found a cheaper apartment after fines and fees had caught up with him. Finally, he said, "I know you probably hate me." "I don't hate you," I replied. "I hate what you did." There was a pause. I'm sorry," he said, the words halting. I was desperate, and I told myself it was okay because you're my mom and you've always been there. I didn't think it through. I closed my eyes, feeling both pain and a strange relief. At least he's not pretending anymore. I thought, "Thank you for saying that," I replied, "but an apology doesn't rebuild trust overnight. That will take time. And it will take you respecting my boundaries." We talked about what those boundaries would be. No access to my accounts, ever. No emergency borrowing without clear plans and documentation. No gaslighting me about my memory or my feelings. If he wanted a relationship with me, it would be built on honesty, not convenience. He agreed, his voice subdued. I didn't know if he would keep that promise. I still don't know entirely, but I do know this. I made mine, and I intend to keep it. I can love my son without sacrificing myself on the altar of his poor decisions. My leather wallet sits in the same spot on my kitchen counter as it always has, but it feels different now when I pick it up. The old slot where the blue card used to live holds my new card, a laminated card with emergency numbers and a small folded note to myself. On that note, in my own handwriting, are 3 lines. "Believe your eyes. Trust your records. Your age is not a weakness." I unfold it sometimes when doubt creeps in, when I wonder if I made too much of a family matter. Then I remember the ATM footage, the overdraft, the power bill, the late-night withdrawals. Doubt doesn't linger long. Object by object, I've reclaimed my life. The floral notebook is no longer just about money, it's about memories I choose to keep and lessons I refuse to forget. The old wallet is not just a container for cards and cash, it's a reminder that sacred things, trust, dignity, safety, can live in ordinary places. Even the bank itself, with its cold air and bright lights, has changed in my mind. It's no longer a place where intimidating papers are signed, it's where I watched a screen tell the truth I had been too afraid to say out loud. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that first day, when Daniel held the blue card over my table and said, "You trust me, don't you?" If I could go back, I wouldn't simply say no. I would say, "I love you, but I trust myself first. I trust what I see, what I count, what I feel when something is wrong." That's the lesson getting older has taught me, in a way the pamphlets and commercials never mention. Aging isn't just about losing things. Strength, hearing, speed. Sometimes it's about gaining a clarity that's sharp enough to cut through lies. If you're listening to my story and seeing pieces of your own life in it, if someone you love has begun treating your hard-earned savings like a bottomless well, if they call you forgetful every time you question them, if your stomach twists when you open your statements, please hear me. You are not overreacting. You are not being ungrateful or dramatic for wanting to protect what you've built. Your age does not cancel out your right to feel safe, to be believed, to say, "This is mine," and you do not get to take it without asking. I won't pretend this story has a perfectly neat ending. My relationship with my son is complicated, tender in some places and scarred in others. There are days when I miss the boy he used to be so much it aches. There are other days when I'm proud of the woman I have become because of what I refuse to tolerate. That's what justice looks like sometimes at our age. Not a courtroom drama with a gavel slamming down, but a quiet woman in a small kitchen, opening her wallet and saying no more, and thumpany. But I got. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've lived through something similar, You're not alone. There are more of us than you think. Women who have been underestimated, overused, and finally decided to draw a line in permanent ink. We may move slowly, our hands may tremble when we sign our names, but that doesn't mean we don't know exactly what we're doing. Would you like to hear more stories of women finding their justice?